Welcome back. We're talking about some of the headline-making stories across China. Still with us, Yun Sun is an expert in China foreign relations. Zhang is with China Wen Hui Daily. Jean Ma is with the Institute of International Finance. And with us from our newsroom, CGTN correspondent Han Peng. And Han Peng, let's talk climate change and China. Earlier this year, China said that it was going to be cancelling more than 100 coal power projects that were already under development, some of it due to coal overcapacity and the rest of it because China is moving towards a more greener economy. So put this in perspective for us. Where is China now in this move towards more renewable energy, moving towards a greener economy?
Well, it's very interesting that China is now both the top carbon dioxide emitter and also the top investor of the new energy across the world. If you look at China's development, particularly in its western territory, we've been taking a lot of visit to places like Xinjiang, and you do see a lot of new solar plants as well as the wind plants being set up there, and they're very new and on very large scale. That's all the efforts by the Chinese government and also Chinese enterprises to boost its new energy development. And this is not just because China tries to fulfill its promise to the world on the Paris Climate Change Agreement, which basically is about cutting the carbon emission, but also China is now fed up with this air pollution thing, because if you visit Beijing in winter, you'll see unbearably heavy smog happening almost throughout the winter, except when there is windy days in Beijing. So that is why there is a much bigger urge from the public, a much more and more rising demand from the public that the government has to clean up the air and has to close down some of the polluting factories, particularly the coal plants and also the steel plants. But it doesn't come without difficulties. It doesn't come without difficulties because that means millions of workers from the steel industry and also from the coal plant industry has to be laid off if it really tries to close down all these factories. So there is still quite a lot of challenge ahead.
So Yun, if you look at these two major powers, the United States and China, and look at their efforts to combat climate change, they seem to be moving in opposite directions. Here we have China, which, as I just mentioned, cancel coal power plants, more investment in renewable energy, and we have Donald Trump taking power here in the United States saying that he wants to go back to coal, he wants to go back to fossil fuels. That's where they are right now. Does that mean that China is slowly going to be able to take the lead now in renewable energy, in combating climate change?
Well, this question depends on two factors. The first one is whether the Chinese have the capacity to really take the leadership role in this discussion. We know that under the Obama administration, U.S. and China engaged in multiple rounds of negotiation on climate change and what China can do more in terms of this important issue. And there are complaints here in the United States that because Obama administration put too much emphasis on the achievement on the climate change front with China, the U.S. government sacrificed other issues or made compromises on other issues. So now we see that Trump administration is moving in a different direction. So whether this issue will continue to be the top of the agenda of the U.S. government remains to be seen, but most people are not expecting this to be a top priority for the United States. So that leads to the second question, will the Chinese have the willingness to assume a leadership role on this issue, because it is costly, it is expensive,
and they don't have a choice, do they?
Depends on what they see as their agenda.
Right.
If they believe that climate change should be China's priority, then they will assume that role. But if, on the other hand, they believe there are other priorities such as economic development or the relationship with other countries, then it's not necessarily a priority for China.
What do you think, Zhang? Will it be a priority? As we heard from Han Peng just a moment ago, it's a very real problem in China, people experiencing the kind of smog that he was talking about on a daily basis. China has already implemented some reforms, some movement towards renewable energy, towards greener energy. What kind of impact has that had so far?
I think many different reforms are going on, and especially the first one is to reduce those kind of over capacities of high pollution industries, especially steel industry. And China has already reduced about 65 million tons of overcapacity of steel in the last 1 year, and I think more will be done in the coming few years. The second is that China is trying to restructure the energy section. And we are now having about 65% of our electricity coming from kind of coal electricity. And in the future, I think China will be trying to strengthen the solar electricity, this kind of liquid natural gas electricity, and this kind of wind electricity, this kind of new kind of energy. And the third one is that China has taken very kind of strict traffic restriction rules in different cities, right. Especially like in Beijing. One vehicle has to stop running into the street every week. And I think in some very extreme circumstance, kind of more restrictions will be applied. So I think this will continue, and but still we have a lot of difficulties to overcome. But especially like when you try to reduce those kind of over capacity, you need to invest a lot. You need to find new jobs for those kind of workers in these industries.
Jean, before we run out of time, I want to talk about the spring festivities. This is normally a time, well, it's a big boom, economic boom for China at this time. Do you think it will sustain for the rest of the year?
Yes, it is a time for people to travel, to spend, and to consume. But one irony is that, in fact, in terms of growth rate, the spending during the Chinese New Year right now is slowing than the spend in the past few years. And the reason is that people actually are shifting the spending into December and November. In November, you have a gigantic bonanza of e-commerce. People buy the goods. And then in December, the Christmas now become an increasingly popular holiday in China. So actually spending moving toward November, December. So people are spending less on the goods, but people are spending more in terms of trips during the long holiday, because it's a very long holiday. So for example, just in the next week, 6 million Chinese will travel abroad for the holidays. That's incredible.
That's a phenomenal number.
No, exactly.
We've seen pictures of that mass migration of people, just humanity moving across one country. And Peng, talking about people moving across China, how does the Chinese transport infrastructure handle this kind of traffic?
Well, actually, if we are counting the trips during the Spring Festival travel rush, we will see 3 billion trips made in just 1 month. So it's just incredible. It's a huge amount of trips being made in just a very short time span. And many of them are going by train, and some of them going by airplane. And also there are people going by car and also by motor bicycles in places like Guangdong province. And if we recall just what's happening 6 or 7 years ago, we could remember that it was almost a nightmare for people like us to really buy a train ticket just to go home from school or just to go home from your workplace. Because at the moment, 1 out of every 6 Chinese is now a migrant worker or a migrant people or students. So it's a very difficult time in the past. But nowadays, we have this fast, high-speed rail train, and also if we put this into perspective, the total length of the high-speed rail in China last year has exceeded 20,000 kilometers long. That's half the length of the total high-speed rail all across the world. And also we have this internet that can help us to buy the train ticket and also the airplane ticket, so that you don't have to really physically go to the train stations and to stand in long lines, sometimes for the whole night, just in order to buy a ticket. So it's making the trips a lot easier, but still it doesn't come without any struggle to really find, to buy a ticket online.
Zhang, President Xi Jinping addressed Chinese leaders ahead of the Spring Festival, and he said the Chinese people have great dreams, but also have a great spirit to work hard and endure hardship to realize such dreams. He's emphasizing the work ethic among the Chinese people. This is going to be very important this year.
Yes, I think even our economy has been in a correct kind of path. Still, we are facing a lot of challenges, including this environmental kind of pollution and industry upgrade, and among many other kind of challenges. I think, especially at this moment, our leadership will be hopeful that our country people will continue our kind of hard-working ethics for our country's economy.
Very quickly, we're running out of time. And what's one of the big stories we should be looking out for from China this year?
From China this year, well, I work on foreign policy, so I definitely will keep my eyes open for the developments in the U.S.-China relations and Trump's upcoming China policies.
Right. Jean, what do you think one of the big stories from China is going to be?
On the economy side, we think the economy can do okay this year. We do not expect a major slowdown for 2017. But on the financial market, we see this is an economy, also on the financial market, is very much leveraged. So in a high interest rate, high inflation can cause a little bit of tremor in the financial market.
Okay, Zhang, I think I have about 10 seconds. What do you say?
I still will be concerned about the quality of our economic growth. Even the growth will be all right, but I will be focusing on the quality. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for joining us.